Hello and welcome once again to Dul Johnson's Creative Talks. My dear viewers, I very especially welcome you again to today's episode. And if you are joining for the first time, I urge you to please like and subscribe and be part of this talk every time. Now, I had promised in the previous video that I was returning to the episode of Why I Tell Lies for a Living, and to connect it to the episode of the importance of reading and how books make impacts on our lives. That's just what I'm going to share with you. I have already explained at length what I meant by telling lies. I might just repeat a sentence or two from it here, which is to say that by lies I am referring to the many inventions that the writer finds to put along with what is the truth or the reality that they have picked to work upon. That even when you find a character, a person doing something that is good that you want to promote, or that is bad that you want to discourage, and that person has a name, and that person has a place, and that person, a place, a family, there are facts about that person, but you don't mention them. All you do is recreate that person. And so he's no longer the original person. And that's why I tell you, and the story also, you embellish it. You create so much that comes on in the narrative in order to make the reading interesting for the reader. So that's my reason for insisting that what we writers do is tell truthful lies, or lies that assist on the kernel of truth that you want to share. Now, that kernel of truth that is very hard to get to, and it is also bitter if you don't make it sweet by the inventions, by creating, by recreating so much that is not part of the reality. If you do not do that, the reader will not enjoy the story. That much I've explained. Now, when I talked about the impact of fiction or of stories on our lives, I had somebody who shared an experience, and I also received comments from many viewers who confessed how much books have impacted upon their lives. Some of them have said, my life being has been modeled by the stories I have read. The way I do this, the way I do that has been modeled by the stories I have read. The way I live my life, the way I react to certain things has been modeled by. There's so much and very interesting comments that I have received. And that is what writers are interested in. But it is not always getting people who love the book or who love the story and learn from it. There are those who read the story and the very truth in the story is their enemy. They hate the truth that has been told in the story. Individuals do that or experience that. Organizations experience that. Now, you can talk about, leaders, for example, in many places experience that and hate it. Why? Because there is this simple statement that truth is bitter, right? So if you are the one in that position, if you are the one that has done those terrible things that the writer has put in the story, or you know the person, or the person is your friend or your relative, for example, or you are part of a system that has created a problem for a society, for example, and that problem is what is being x-rayed in the story, of course, you are not going to be a friend to that writer. You are going to be an enemy. In that lecture, I clearly stated that if our leaders or our politicians were readers as we expect them to be, our societies would be different. I did say that if they had read, and I mentioned a number of books, if they had read such texts, they would probably behave differently. Now, we can share examples. The most popular coming from Nigeria is Chinua Achebe's A Man of the People. That novel was written about the behavior, the destructive behavior of politicians in a country that had received independence not too long before. And it was an indictment on the politicians. And unfortunately for Achebe, he predicted a coup. Well, he did not predict, of course. He actually foresaw. Well, if I say foresaw, maybe I'll be saying the same thing he predicted. But of course, as a writer, he had wished that something positive will happen that will change the society for the better. Now, somebody else in the system will see it as something that is negative, right? So because he made that prediction, not long after the book came out, there was a coup. And of course, he was getting into trouble because they believed that someone had leaked information to him about a coup going to happen. It happened in many other countries. Go to South Africa, for example. The writers like Dennis Brutus were exiled. I think Athol Fugard too had some little problems. Peter Abrahams, all of those who were writing against the political system were getting into trouble. I think the most celebrated example in Africa would be Ngugi wa Thiong'o, right? If we look at Ngugi's literary trajectory, his early books didn't create quite a problem for the system because he was then fighting those who were a problem to the Kenyan system, right? To the colonial, he was facing the colonial system. But the moment the Kenyans themselves took over and they started to behave as it was in other parts of Africa, as it was, we remember the popular, the beautiful ones are not yet born by Aikweyama. Look at the behavior of the politicians when the British left. Now, the same thing was happening in Kenya, and Ngugi descended very, very heavily on the political system. His books, such as Petals of Blood, for example, Devil on the Cross, for example, I Will Marry When I Want, for example. What did those books do? The system turned against him. He was exiled, and he has lived in exile since then. This is like over 20 or more years. Ngugi has been in exile. And there are many, many, many other writers that have faced this same problem because they told the truth in their books. Now, this is in spite of the fact that each of these books, if you read them, there is a lot of embellishment. But those who are guilty will always see that this is me or this is my government. Okay? So, what point am I making? That the discerning reader can see the truth, can see the facts in a story. Yes. And he or she who is reading the story as a private person who wants to enjoy a story and perhaps learn something from it will actually take a lesson from the story. But the writer, in including those lies, those embellishments, is aware that there are those who hate the truth in their story. And therefore, they want to present it in such a way that they can give themselves some kind of protection. That this is not Mr. A I'm talking about. Or even that this is Mr. A I'm talking about, it is not the Mr. A that you know. That is what the writer intends to do when they embellish the story. But how many of the writers who have done that have gone free? As a matter of fact, it is only because many, many, many leaders or so-called leaders do not read, or even those whom they put as gatekeepers do not read as much. Otherwise, perhaps half of our writers, especially in Africa, would be in trouble. So, simply put, writers are endangered if they expose the truth as it is. And therefore, there is the need to protect yourself, to get the sweet covering for that bitter pill that you are putting in the story. That's why they do it. Now, I can give you a very a simple and direct example, even from my own life. I mean, I did a movie, right? I did a story about a country, my country. And of course, it is a story that tells the entire truth about the way we are at the moment. And the gatekeepers told me, no, you cannot take this movie to the public. You have to do this, you have to do that, you have to do this, you have to take this out, you have to, you know. That is what most writers want to avoid. The reason for creating the clothing or the cover that is the quoting that is the lie that I talk about. But I assure you that the impact that a story makes on the generality of the readers is great, and writers must continue to write, even when it means that you are going to be in trouble, because that truth revealed is what impacts on the lives of your readers. Thank you very much for watching this episode. And if you are still not very satisfied with my explanation of the impact of fiction or stories on our lives. I suggest that you do some more reading, but you can still send your questions to me. If there is a need, I will still do a follow-up, or perhaps I will respond to you individually to be able to clarify whatever problems you have in your mind. Please do not forget to like and subscribe, especially if you're just coming to this channel new. Bye-bye.